A shy boy records a cassette tape with a love confession, but he sends it to the wrong person, and it ends up in the hands of his rival. Hello and welcome to 80s Love Stories, where I, your favorite narrator, Christopher, bring you an exciting love story straight from the unforgettable 1980s. Get ready for a journey full of nostalgia and incredible twists. Today's story is truly remarkable, with an ending that's sure to touch your heart and leave you amazed. So, stay with me until the very last moment. I hope this experience is unforgettable for you, and may God bless you and your family. Now, let's get started. The familiar click of the cassette player echoed through Uma's bedroom as she pressed the record button with trembling fingers. Her heart pounded against her chest as she stared at the blank Maxwell tape laying on her floral bedspread, its pristine surface waiting to capture her deepest secret. The warm glow of her lava lamp cast dancing shadows on the wall covered with Duran Duran and The Cure posters. Outside her window, the neon signs of Mike's Diner flickered in the growing twilight, painting her room in alternating splashes of pink and blue. "Carter," she whispered into the built-in microphone, then immediately stopped the recording. No, that wouldn't do. Her voice sounded too squeaky, too nervous. She ejected the tape, rewound it, and started again. "Carter," she tried once more, this time letting the name roll off her tongue like she'd practiced 100 times in front of her mirror. "I know we've been lab partners in chemistry class for months now, and there's something I need to tell you." Uma paused, fidgeting with the friendship bracelet Grace had made her last summer at band camp. The constant whirring of the cassette recorder filled the silence as she gathered her courage. "Remember that day at the arcade when you helped me beat the final level of Gallagher? Or when you shared your umbrella with me during that sudden downpour after school? I've wanted to tell you something since then, but I never found the right moment." The words began flowing easier now, like a dam breaking after years of pressure. Uma told the tape everything, how her heart skipped a beat whenever Carter smiled at her across the chemistry lab, how she loved the way he always wore those silly NASA t-shirts, how his kind eyes made her feel like she could tell him anything. Well, almost anything. Until now. Just as Uma was about to reveal her feelings, her bedroom door burst open. She jumped, accidentally knocking over her collection of Rubik's cubes. "Uma, you won't believe what just happened at the mall," Grace burst in, her side ponytail bouncing with excitement. She stopped short when she saw the cassette recorder. "Oh my gosh, are you finally doing it? Are you recording your confession for Carter?" Uma quickly hit stop, her cheeks burning. "Grace, haven't you heard of knocking?" Sorry. Grace flopped onto Uma's bed, making the springs creak. "But this is huge. Did you finish it? What did you say? When are you giving it to him?" "I was almost done when you barged in," Uma sighed, but couldn't help smiling at her best friend's enthusiasm. "And I don't know if I'm actually going to give it to him. Maybe this is a stupid idea." "No way. This is totally romantic. It's like that scene in Say Anything, but with a tape instead of a boombox." Grace picked up the cassette, examining it. "Plus, Carter's always carrying around that Walkman of his. See, it's perfect." Uma took the tape back carefully. "But what if he thinks it's weird? What if he plays it in front of everyone at lunch? What if Tyler finds out?" The mention of Tyler made both girls grimace. Tyler, the self-proclaimed king of their high school, had made it his mission to torment Carter ever since Carter had corrected him in front of everyone during debate club. The last thing Uma wanted was to give Tyler more ammunition. "Tyler won't find out," Grace assured her, "and Carter would never make fun of you. He's not like that. Remember how nice he was when Jenny Peterson had that total meltdown during her oral presentation?" Uma did remember. While everyone else had snickered, Carter had quietly helped Jenny gather her fallen note cards and given her an encouraging smile. That was just the kind of person he was. "And besides," Grace continued, "if you don't tell him how you feel soon, someone else might. I heard Melissa talking about asking him to the spring fling." Uma's stomach dropped. Melissa, with her perfect hair and designer jeans, had been flirting with Carter lately. The thought of them slow dancing to Time After Time made Uma feel slightly sick. "Fine," Uma said, pressing record again, "but you have to be quiet." Grace mimed, zipping her lips, and threw away the imaginary key. Uma took a deep breath and finished her confession, her voice growing stronger with each word. She poured out everything she'd been holding back, how much she admired his kindness, his intelligence, his quiet confidence, how she looked forward to chemistry class just to see him, how she hoped, maybe, he might feel the same way. When she finally pressed stop, her hands were shaking but her heart felt lighter. Grace wrapped her in a tight hug. That was beautiful. He's going to love it. Uma carefully placed the cassette in its case, then slipped it into her backpack. I'll give it to him tomorrow during study hall. He always sits in the back corner of the library, listening to music while he works on calculus. This is going to be epic, Grace squealed. Like totally tubular. Uma threw a pillow at her. Nobody actually talks like that. As they collapsed into giggles, Uma felt a mix of terror and excitement about what tomorrow would bring. The tape felt like it was burning a hole in her backpack, a tiny time bomb of truth just waiting to explode. What Uma didn't know was that fate had other plans for her carefully crafted confession, plans that would turn her world upside down in ways she never could have imagined. As the last rays of sunlight faded outside her window, Uma tucked the cassette safely away, completely unaware that it would soon end up in the worst possible hands, and set in motion a chain of events that would change everything. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Roosevelt High School, casting long shadows across the freshly waxed hallway floors. Uma clutched her backpack closer to her chest, feeling the hard edge of the cassette case press against her ribs like a reminder of what she had to do. The familiar sounds of morning at Roosevelt filled the air, the metallic clang of locker doors, the squeak of sneakers on linoleum, the blend of voices and laughter bouncing off the walls. Madonna's Borderline drifted from someone's boombox, mixing with the chaos of passing period. "Did you bring it?" Grace appeared beside Uma, practically vibrating with excitement. She was wearing her favorite jean jacket, covered in pins from bands like The Bangles and Tears for Fears. Uma patted her backpack. "It's here. But I'm having second thoughts. Maybe we should wait until after the chemistry test next week, or—" "No way." Grace steered Uma toward her locker. "No more excuses. Today's the day." As Uma spun her combination lock, she caught a glimpse of Carter down the hall. He was at his own locker, wearing one of his signature NASA shirts, this one featuring the Space Shuttle Columbia. His dark hair fell slightly over his eyes as he sorted through his textbooks. Uma's heart did its usual somersault. Then Tyler appeared. He swaggered down the hallway like he owned it, his varsity jacket marking him as Roosevelt High royalty. As he passed Carter's locker, he deliberately knocked Carter's books to the floor with a sweep of his arm. "Oops," Tyler smirked. "Better watch where you put your stuff. Space case." Carter said nothing, just knelt down to gather his scattered belongings. Uma's hands clenched into fists. She wanted to march over there and help Carter, to tell Tyler exactly what she thought of him, but she stayed frozen at her locker, hating herself for being too scared. Just ignore him," Grace whispered, seeing Uma's expression. "Tyler's just jealous because Carter's actually going somewhere after graduation. Everyone knows Tyler's only getting into state because his dad's on the board." Uma nodded, but the sick feeling in her stomach remained. She watched as Carter collected the last of his papers and headed to first period, his shoulders slightly hunched. Tyler's laughter echoed down the hallway. "Maybe I should wait," Uma said. "Carter's probably not in the mood for this after what just happened. Or maybe finding your tape would make his whole day better," Grace countered. "Come on, Uma. You've been crushing on him since freshman year. Don't let Tyler ruin this too." The warning bell rang, sending students scurrying to their classrooms. Uma slammed her locker shut, her mind still churning with uncertainty. "I have to get to English," Grace said. "First, but you've got study hall third period, right? That's when you're going to do it." "Yeah," Uma replied weakly. "That's the plan." "It's going to be amazing." Grace gave her a quick hug. "Meet me by the vending machines at lunch. I want to hear everything." As Grace disappeared into the crowd, Uma headed to her first class, the cassette feeling heavier with each step. The morning dragged by in a blur of lectures and worksheets. Uma couldn't focus on anything. She kept running through different scenarios in her head, Carter listening to the tape and smiling, Carter listening to the tape and laughing, Carter never wanting to speak to her again. Finally, third period arrived. Uma's hands were sweating as she walked into the library. The familiar smell of old books and furniture polish did nothing to calm her nerves. She scanned the room, spotting Carter in his usual corner. His Walkman was on the table beside him as he bent over a calculus textbook, mechanical pencil moving swiftly across graph paper. Uma took a deep breath and started walking toward him. This was it. She'd just casually say hi, maybe make some comment about the chemistry homework, then slip him the tape before she lost her nerve. She was halfway there when Ms. Patterson, the librarian, called out to her, "Uma, just the person I needed to see. Could you help me with something in the card catalog room?" "It'll only take a minute." Uma glanced longingly at Carter, then back at Mrs. Patterson's expectant face. "Of course," she said, changing direction. The minute turned into 15 as Ms. Patterson had Uma help her reorganize a section of catalog cards that some freshman had knocked over. By the time Uma emerged, Carter's corner was empty. Only his calculator remained on the table, forgotten in his rush to his next class. Uma's heart sank. She'd missed her chance. Now she'd have to wait until tomorrow, enduring another sleepless night of anticipation and doubt. Then she noticed something else on Carter's table. His Walkman. He must have been in such a hurry, and he'd left that behind too. Uma picked it up, running her fingers over the scratched silver surface. She knew Carter treasured this Walkman. He'd saved up for months working at the record store to buy it. An idea began forming in her mind. Before she could talk herself out of it, Uma pulled the cassette from her backpack and slipped it into the Walkman. She'd leave it here with a note explaining that she'd found both items. Carter would come back for them eventually, and when he did, he'd find her confession waiting for him. It was perfect. She wouldn't have to face him directly, wouldn't have to see his immediate reaction. He could process her feelings in private. Uma quickly scribbled a note on a piece of notebook paper. "Found these on your table. Didn't want them to get lost. Uma." She was so focused on her task that she didn't notice Tyler entering the library. Didn't see him stop and watch her with narrowed eyes as she placed the Walkman and note back on the table. Didn't realize he'd been looking for a way to get back at Carter ever since the debate club incident. As Uma hurried out of the library to her next class, Tyler sauntered over to Carter's abandoned table. He picked up the Walkman, turning it over in his hands with a calculating smile. "Well, well," he muttered. "What do we have here?" The lunch bell rang, and students began flooding the hallways. Uma rushed to meet Grace by the vending machines, her heart lighter now that she'd finally taken action. Soon, Carter would know how she felt. Soon, everything could change. But as she rounded the corner, she stopped dead in her tracks. Tyler was standing by the vending machines, Carter's Walkman in his hands, playing her tape at full volume. "And when you helped me with that chemistry problem last week, the way you explained it so patiently." Uma's recorded voice echoed through the hallway. Students stopped to listen, expressions ranging from curiosity to cruel amusement. Uma felt the blood drain from her face. This couldn't be happening, this had to be a nightmare. But it wasn't. Her most private feelings were being broadcast to the entire school, and there was nothing she could do about it. Tyler's eyes met hers across the crowded hallway, his smile widening as he saw her distress. He turned up the volume even louder, ensuring everyone could hear Uma's heartfelt confession. Grace appeared beside Uma, her face horrified. "Oh, no," she whispered. "Oh, no, no, no." Uma turned and ran, pushing through the crowd of laughing students, trying to escape the sound of her own voice, declaring her love for Carter. She didn't stop running until she reached the girls' bathroom on the second floor, locking herself in a stall as hot tears began falling. She could still hear scattered laughter from the hallway, could imagine the stories already spreading through the school. What would Carter think when he heard about this? Would he even want to be her lab partner anymore? The bathroom door creaked open, and Uma held her breath, praying whoever it was wouldn't recognize her shoes under the stall door. "Uma!" Grace's voice was soft, concerned. "Uma, are you in here?" Uma couldn't respond. Her throat felt too tight. "It's going to be okay," Grace continued. "We'll figure this out. Maybe Carter won't even hear about it. Maybe—" The bathroom door opened again, and someone else entered. Did you hear?" A voice Uma recognized as Melissa's said to her friend. Tyler found some totally desperate love confession for Carter in his Walkman. Everyone's talking about it. Apparently, it was that weird girl from his chemistry class. Uma pressed her hands over her ears, but she couldn't block out the sound of their laughter. This was worse than any scenario she'd imagined. So much worse. She stayed in that bathroom stall until long after the lunch bell rang, missing her afternoon classes. She couldn't face them, couldn't face anyone. Not after this. As the final bell of the day echoed through the empty bathroom, Uma finally emerged from her hiding place. Her eyes were red and puffy, her carefully chosen outfit wrinkled from sitting hunched on the toilet seat for hours. She peered cautiously into the hallway. Most students would be gone by now, headed to various after-school activities or home to start their weekends. Maybe she could slip out unnoticed. But as she turned toward the exit, she found herself face to face with Carter. He was standing there, his NASA shirt slightly rumpled, his dark hair messy like he'd been running his hands through it. In his hands, he held his Walkman and Uma's tape. Uma felt fresh tears threatening to fall. She opened her mouth to say something, to apologize, to explain, to beg him to forget this ever happened. But no words came out. Carter took a step forward, and Uma braced herself for rejection, for anger, for disgust. But what happened next would change everything she thought she knew about him, about herself, and about the true meaning of courage. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead in the empty hallway as Uma and Carter stood facing each other. Uma's heart pounded so loudly she was sure he could hear it. She stared at the scuffed linoleum floor, unable to meet his eyes. "I heard what Tyler did," Carter said softly, breaking the suffocating silence. "That wasn't right." Uma wrapped her arms around herself, still looking down. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I never meant for any of this to happen. I found your Walkman in the library, and I thought—" "Uma." Something in Carter's voice made her finally look up. His expression wasn't angry or disgusted. If anything, he looked concerned. "You don't have to apologize. Tyler's the one who should be sorry." He took another step closer, and Uma noticed his hands were shaking slightly as he held out the Walkman. "I haven't listened to it yet," he said. "The tape. I mean, Tyler still had it when I found out what happened, and well—" He gestured to his slightly bruised knuckles. Uma's eyes widened. "Did you—" "Let's just say Tyler might think twice before messing with other people's private property again." Carter's mouth quirked up in a small smile. "Though Mrs. Patterson probably won't let me back in the library for a while." Uma couldn't quite process what she was hearing. Carter had stood up to Tyler. For her. "But everyone heard it," she said miserably. "At lunch, Tyler played it for the whole school." "Not the whole thing," Carter corrected. "Grace managed to grab the Walkman and stop it before too much. And honestly, most people were more focused on Tyler being a jerk than anything else." Uma felt a rush of gratitude for her best friend. Of course, Grace would try to minimize the damage. Still, the embarrassment of the situation weighed heavily on her. "I should go," she mumbled, turning toward the exit. "Just forget about everything, okay? We can pretend this never happened." "Wait!" Carter caught her wrist gently, then immediately let go as if worried he'd overstepped. "I mean, would you want to maybe get a milkshake or something at Mike's Diner?" Uma stared at him, sure she'd misheard. "What?" "It's just, I'd really like to hear what's on this tape." Carter held up the Walkman. "Faz, but I'd rather hear it from you, if you want to tell me, that is." The hope in his voice made Uma's heart flutter. Could it be possible that she hadn't completely ruined everything? Before she could respond, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the hallway. They both turned to see Tyler rounding the corner, his nose slightly swollen, a dark bruise forming under his left eye. Tyler stopped short when he saw them, his face twisting into a sneer despite his injuries. "Well, isn't this sweet? The space nerd and his little—" "Don't." Carter's voice was quiet but firm. "Just don't, Tyler. Haven't you done enough?" Tyler took a threatening step forward, but Uma noticed he kept his distance from Carter. "You got lucky with that sucker punch, but this isn't over." "Yes, it is." Uma surprised herself by speaking up. Maybe it was the events of the day, Or maybe it was Carter's presence beside her. But something gave her the courage she'd been missing that morning. "You're not the king of this school, Tyler. You're just a bully who can't stand that some people are better than you without having to put others down." Tyler's face reddened. He opened his mouth to respond, but the sound of more footsteps approaching made him think better of it. With a final glare, he turned and stalked away. Uma let out a shaky breath, adrenaline still coursing through her veins. She couldn't believe she'd just stood up to Tyler. "That was amazing," Carter said, grinning at her. "Did you see his face?" Uma couldn't help but laugh, the tension of the day finally breaking. "I thought my legs were going to give out." But they didn't. Carter's expression grew serious. "You're braver than you think, Uma. Standing up to Tyler just now, that took real courage. Kind of like recording your feelings on a tape for someone." Uma felt her cheeks warm. Even if that someone wasn't supposed to find out the way they did. Even then. Carter fidgeted with the Walkman. "So, about that milkshake?" Uma looked at him, really looked at him. At his kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, at the way his NASA shirt was slightly untucked, at the hopeful smile playing around his mouth. She thought about all the times she'd watched him from afar, too scared to show her true feelings, about how he'd defended her honor today without even knowing what she'd said on that tape. "Okay," she said, "but I get to choose the flavor." The walk to Mike's diner was both awkward and wonderful. They didn't talk much, but Uma was acutely aware of Carter's presence beside her, of how their hands would occasionally brush as they walked. The neon signs of the diner glowed warmly in the falling dusk, promising sanctuary from the chaos of the day. The bell above the door chimed as they entered, the familiar smell of French fries and coffee wrapped around them like a comfort blanket. The jukebox in the corner was playing Every Breath You Take by the Police, and a few other Roosevelt students were scattered among the red vinyl booths. Uma noticed some of them watching and whispering, but somehow it didn't matter as much anymore. She'd survived Tyler's worst attempt to humiliate her. What was a little gossip compared to that? They slid into a booth near the back, and Uma found herself facing Carter across a Formica tabletop decorated with tiny boomerang patterns. It felt surreal, like all those daydreams she'd had about spending time with him were suddenly impossibly real. "So," Carter said, after they'd ordered their milkshakes, chocolate for him, strawberry for her, "about that tape." Uma took a deep breath. She could do this. After everything that had happened today, she could finally tell Carter the truth, face to face this time. But before she could speak, the diner's door burst open. Grace rushed in, her face flushed with excitement. "Uma, I've been looking everywhere for you. You'll never believe what just happened at cheerleading practice." She stopped short when she saw Carter. Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt." Uma couldn't help but laugh at her friend's familiar enthusiasm. Some things never changed, even on the craziest of days. "It's okay," she said, sliding over to make room for Grace. "Join us?" Grace hesitated, looking between them. "Are you sure? Because I can totally come back later." "Stay," Carter said, smiling. "I want to hear what happened at cheerleading practice. Besides," he pulled out the Walkman and set it on the table. "I think this conversation might need a witness. You know, in case Tyler tries to twist things around again." Uma felt a warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with embarrassment this time, because the way Carter was looking at her, well, maybe she wasn't the only one with feelings to share. As their milkshakes arrived and Grace launched into her story about the chaos at practice, Uma caught Carter's eye across the table. He smiled at her, not his usual shy smile, but something warmer, more personal, something that made her think maybe, just maybe, this disaster of a day might turn out to be the best thing that ever happened to her. But the evening was far from over, and Uma was about to discover that sometimes the most important conversations don't need words at all. The jukebox switched to Time After Time as Grace finished her story about the cheerleading drama. The neon lights from Mike's diner's window cast a warm glow across their booth, and Uma stirred the remains of her strawberry milkshake with her straw, stealing glances at Carter whenever she thought he wasn't looking. Grace checked her watch and jumped up. "Oh my gosh, I totally forgot. I promised my mum I'd help with dinner tonight." She gathered her things, then gave Uma a meaningful look. "Walk me out." Uma followed Grace to the diner's entrance, leaving Carter absorbed in examining the track list on the jukebox. "Spill," Grace whispered as soon as they were out of earshot. "What happened? How did you end up here with him? Did he listen to the tape?" Uma quickly filled her in on the confrontation with Tyler and Carter's invitation to the diner. Grace's eyes widened at the mention of Carter's bruised knuckles. "He got into a fight with Tyler. For you," Grace squealed, then quickly lowered her voice. "That's like totally romantic, but wait." Her expression grew serious. "What about Melissa? What about her? I heard she asked him to study together for the chemistry test next week. In the library, alone." Uma's stomach dropped. Of course Melissa would make her move now, and why shouldn't she? Carter wasn't actually Uma's boyfriend. They were just sharing a milkshake because he felt sorry for her after Tyler's cruel prank. "Maybe I should just go," Uma said, glancing back at Carter. "Does this whole thing is probably just pity." "Don't you dare," Grace grabbed her shoulders. "He fought Tyler for you." "Tyler, nobody does that out of pity. Just be yourself. The Uma who was brave enough to make that tape in the first place." After Grace left, Uma returned to find Carter had moved back to their booth. The Walkman sat between them on the table like a question mark. "Your friend is something else," Carter said, smiling. "Grace? Yeah, she's pretty amazing." Uma fidgeted with her napkin. "She's the one who convinced me to make the tape in the first place." "I'm glad she did." Carter's voice was soft. "Even if things got a little complicated." Uma looked up, surprised. "You are?" Before Carter could respond, a new song started playing on the jukebox. "Should I Stay or Should I Go" by The Clash. Uma recognized it as one of the songs Carter was always listening to in chemistry class. "Hey, this is..." They both started at the same time, then laughed. "I love The Clash," Carter said. "They're so different from all the synthetic pop stuff on the radio." Uma nodded eagerly. "The way they mix punk and reggae influences is amazing. Though I have to admit, I also like some of that synthetic pop stuff." "Oh yeah?" Carter leaned forward, interested. "Like what?" "Promise not to laugh. Cross my heart. I really love Cyndi Lauper, especially Time After Time. It's just so honest, you know?" Carter's eyes lit up. "Actually, I have something to show you." He reached into his backpack and pulled out a cassette case. "I've been working on this for a while, but I wasn't sure how to give it to you." Uma took the case with trembling fingers. Inside was a hand-decorated tape, covered in carefully drawn stars and scientific formulas. The label read, "Songs That Make Me Think of You." "You made me a mixtape." Carter rubbed the back of his neck and suddenly shy. "I started it after that day you helped me clean up the chemistry lab when Tyler knocked over our titration experiment. You were humming Time After Time and while we worked, and I don't know, it felt like a sign or something." Uma stared at the tape, her heart racing. "But what about Melissa? I heard she asked you to study together." "Melissa?" Carter looked confused. "Oh, for the chemistry test? Yeah, she did, but I told her I already had a study partner." He gave Uma a meaningful look. "The best lab partner, actually." Uma felt a smile spreading across her face. "Really? Really? Though I should warn you, I included some Clash songs on that tape. Maybe we can educate each other on our musical tastes." "I'd like that." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the jukebox now playing Sweet Dreams by the Eurythmics. Uma thought about how this day had started with her terrified confession and how it had transformed into something she never could have imagined. Then Carter's expression grew serious. "Uma, about Tyler. I need to tell you something." Uma's happiness faltered. "Fine, what is it?" "After our fight, he said some things about making sure everyone at school knew what a loser I was for defending you, about having something planned for Monday that would put us both in our place." Uma felt her earlier courage wavering. "What do you think he's going to do?" "I don't know, but whatever it is, we'll face it together." Carter reached across the table and took her hand. "I'm tired of letting him push people around just because his dad's on the school board." Uma looked at their joined hands, feeling electricity shoot up her arm at his touch. "Together?" "Together." Carter squeezed her hand. "Besides, I still haven't properly listened to your tape. And after you hear my mixtape, you'll have just as much embarrassing material on me." Uma laughed, but her mind was already racing with possibilities of what Tyler might be planning. She knew his ego wouldn't let him accept defeat easily, especially not after Carter had humiliated him in front of everyone. Just then, the diner's door chimed. Uma looked up to see Melissa walking in with a group of her friends. Their eyes met, and Melissa's expression darkened when she saw Uma and Carter holding hands. "Well," Melissa said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "I guess now we know why Carter turned down my study invitation. Though I have to say, I didn't think he was desperate enough to fall for some pathetic tape confession." Carter started to stand up, but Uma squeezed his hand. "It's okay," she whispered. "She's not worth it." But as Melissa and her friends settled into a nearby booth, continuing to make loud comments about certain people not knowing their place, Uma realized that Monday wasn't the only battle they would have to face. The question was, would their newfound connection be strong enough to withstand what was coming? As if reading her thoughts, Carter pulled out his Walkman and placed it on the table between them. "What do you say we listen to both tapes? Right here, right now, together. Let everyone see we're not ashamed." Uma looked at the Walkman, then at Carter's earnest face, and made her decision. Whatever Tyler and Melissa had planned, whatever challenges lay ahead, she wasn't going to hide anymore. She reached for the headphones, offering one earbud to Carter. As they huddled close together, their heads nearly touching, Uma pressed play on her confession tape. It was time to face the music, literally and figuratively, but what played through those headphones would change everything once again, in ways neither of them could have predicted. As the first notes of Uma's confession tape began to play, something unexpected happened. The audio was different from what everyone had heard before. Instead of Uma's voice declaring her feelings for Carter, there was a strange rustling sound, then a muffled conversation. Carter and Uma exchanged puzzled looks. The tape Tyler had played in the hallway wasn't the original recording at all. "Wait," Carter whispered, leaning closer to the Walkman. "Is that your friend Grace's voice?" Indeed, it was Grace's distinctive tone, but she sounded nervous, almost conspiratorial. As they listened, the truth began to unfold. Grace had intercepted the original tape before Tyler could play the entire thing. What he'd broadcast was a carefully crafted decoy, a recording she'd quickly made to protect Uma's privacy. The real tape held something entirely different, a plan. "Tyler's been blackmailing someone," Grace's voice said clearly. "And I've got proof." The recording continued, revealing that Grace had discovered Tyler was using compromising information about a student to force them to help him cheat on tests and manipulate school activities. The student, terrified of exposure, had been helping Tyler maintain his unearned reputation. Carter and Uma looked at each other, stunned. The tape wasn't just a love confession. It was evidence of something much bigger. As the recording played out, they learned that Grace had meticulously documented Tyler's blackmail scheme, recording conversations and collecting evidence. The cassette was her insurance policy, a way to protect the vulnerable student and expose Tyler's true nature. "We need to take this to Ms. Patterson," Carter said, his voice a mix of anger and determination. "Tyler can't keep getting away with this." Uma nodded, squeezing his hand. The embarrassment of her original confession seemed insignificant now. They had something far more important to address. When they approached the school administration with the tape, everything changed. Tyler's carefully constructed facade crumbled. The student he'd been blackmailing found the courage to speak up. Corroborating Grace's evidence, Tyler was suspended, his dreams of college sports scholarships evaporating overnight. But the real victory was more personal. The student Tyler had threatened found freedom. Grace was hailed as a hero, her quick thinking and loyalty saving not just Uma, but someone else entirely. As for Uma and Carter, the experience brought them closer. The mixtape Carter had made became a symbol of their connection, a promise of something real, something genuine in a high school world often defined by cruelty and superficiality. On the night of the spring fling, they slow danced to Time After Time, the song that had first hinted at their connection. Uma's cassette recorder sat forgotten in her bedroom, its magic having served its purpose in ways she could never have imagined. Some secrets they discovered are better spoken aloud, and some confessions are worth more than just words on a tape. The neon lights of Mike's diner continued to flicker outside, a silent witness to a story of courage, friendship, and unexpected truth. The cardboard box was heavy, marked simply with high school memories in faded black marker. Uma Harrison, now Uma Mitchell, pulled it from the top shelf of her home office, dust motes dancing in the late afternoon sunlight. Her husband, David, looked up from his laptop. "Ja, need help?" "Just reminiscing," she called back, carefully opening the box. The first thing that caught her eye was the old cassette player. Beside it, a collection of mixtapes, including the one Carter had made for her all those years ago. She ran her fingers over the carefully drawn stars and scientific formulas, memories flooding back. Carter. They'd lost touch after college, though their paths had crossed occasionally. He'd gone on to NASA, just like those NASA t-shirts had always suggested. She'd become a high school science teacher, finding a way to make chemistry both challenging and exciting for her students. A photograph slipped from between some old papers. Grace, standing proudly in her wedding dress. She'd become an investigative journalist, that same tenacity that had saved Uma in high school, now changing lives through her reporting. Her exposé on systemic corruption in local school boards had won her a prestigious award 3 years ago. Uma laughed softly, remembering. The Roosevelt High School reunion invitation sat on her desk. 20-year mark. She hadn't planned on going. Reunions seemed like relics of a different time. But something about this one called to her. David noticed her hesitation. "You should go," he said, understanding without needing many words. Their marriage was built on that kind of communication, something she'd learned from her teenage experiences with vulnerability and truth. When she arrived at the reunion, the school gymnasium looked both familiar and strange, transformed by time, yet echoing with memories. Grace spotted her first, racing across the room in heels and a blazing red power suit. "Uma!" They embraced, two women who had shared everything, who had navigated the treacherous waters of high school together. "You look exactly the same," Uma laughed. "Liar," Grace retorted. "But I'll take it." And then, unexpectedly, Carter. He'd aged gracefully, laugh lines around his eyes, still wearing a NASA-themed button on his blazer. They locked eyes across the room, and suddenly they were 17 again, nervous, hopeful, on the cusp of something transformative. Over glasses of wine, they shared their stories. Carter had indeed worked for NASA, spending years on various space exploration projects. He was now a professor, teaching aerospace engineering and writing books about the future of space travel. "Remember that cassette?" he asked, a mischievous glint in his eye. Uma blushed. Some moments were timeless. Grace filled them in on her latest project, a deep-dive investigation into systemic bullying in educational institutions. "Some things never change," she said, "but some things do get better." Tyler, they learned, had not fared well. After his suspension in high school, his planned college sports career had collapsed. He'd bounced between odd jobs, a cautionary tale about the consequences of cruelty. As the night progressed, Uma realized something profound. That teenage moment of vulnerability, her cassette confession, had been more than just a teenage crush. It had been the first real moment of courage in her life. She'd learned to speak her truth, to stand up to bullies, to embrace authenticity. Carter squeezed her hand, a gesture both nostalgic and current. They weren't teenagers in love anymore, but they were something perhaps more meaningful. Friends, survivors, people who had witnessed each other's most vulnerable moments and respected them. Grace raised a toast. "To unexpected stories," she said, "and to the cassette that changed everything." Later that night, after David had gone to bed, Uma pulled out the old cassette player. The tape Carter had made for her decades ago still played perfectly. As time after time filled the quiet room, she smiled. Some stories never truly end. They just transform like memories captured on magnetic tape. Fragile, precious, eternal. Outside, the night was alive with possibility, just like they had been all those years ago. Thank you for watching today's story. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel to relive the magic of the 80s every day with our heartfelt stories. May God bless you and your family, and don't forget to click on the video popping up on the screen right now. It's another totally rad story you won't want to miss. See you in the next video, and stay awesome.